Good afternoon. My name is Andy Barbiero, and I'm joined by my colleague Charlotte Murphy. We're both
Good.
educational consultants. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
I work out of the office in Italy, based in Milan. And Charlotte, where are you from?
I work out of the office in Oxford, but I'm based in Brighton on the south coast of England.
So we're here today to walk you through how we can choose a platform and the tools we can use when doing video conferencing. So as you all know, we've all been working in a lockdown situation where we're doing classes from home, and I'm sure most of you are also doing all these classes from home as well. And some of you perhaps are working with video conferencing platforms for the first time. So our objective today is just to give you some ideas and some best practice on great platforms to work with, the key characteristics you should be using, and a little insight on how to keep that rapport with your teachers, even though you're working online. So I'm going to start by let me just go through one of the slides for you. I'm going to start the first part of the session where we're going to look at what a video conferencing platform is and video conferencing features. And then I will hand over to my colleague Charlotte, who will walk you through creating rapport online, and then we'll come back on together with some conclusions.
Thank you, Andy. See you later.
Bye, Charlotte. We'll see you soon. So let's begin with what a video conferencing platform actually is. So a video conferencing platform is your interactive whiteboard online that will allow you to present your ebook to your students. And it has a series of tools that you can use to allow you to better present those characteristics of your book that you would normally do if you were in front of that interactive whiteboard with students sitting in front of you. Now, I want to distinguish between a video conferencing platform and an LMS, or learning management system, which are two very distinct and very different platforms. So a learning management system is a platform for digital learning. The L stands for learning, which is the idea of creating a single source of e-courses for training materials. Management, M, it means you're managing the courses and the learners, and the system part is a computer system. So this is a way to automate that tedious work like grading, processing statistics, and preparing reports. So this kind of a system allows you to create and store e-learning courses. It provides learners access to the content, and it helps you evaluate the results. An LMS is a well-organized system where you can manage the training process, but it's not a video conferencing platform. It's a system that is for self-study for your students, and it's a way to create online classes that you can follow. So we're not going to be looking specifically at LMSs today. We're going to look more at video conferencing platforms, which are your window to being able to work with your students from a distance. Here are some examples of some of these systems. Now, what kind of systems do you work with? Here I have examples of Skype, Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Apple FaceTime. These are all different video conferencing platforms that we can use to show our ebooks to our students. Personally, I've been using Microsoft Teams a lot because the characteristics in that platform marry really nicely with the way that I teach. I know a lot of my teacher colleagues use Google Meet, for example. Zoom is an extremely popular video conferencing platform, I think, for all of its handy tools that it has that I'm going to walk you through today. So which of these should you choose? Well, that's really up to the features that would work best with the way that you teach. And so let's look at some of those features, and I want to show you a little bit about the ones that I think are the most useful for doing online lessons for English language training. So let's start with a screen share feature. Now, obviously, in my opinion, the most important feature that you would need if you're going to be doing online lessons is the ability to share your screen with the students that are participating in your class. And so I suggest looking for a video conferencing platform with a strong, stable screen sharing tool. And this simply will be your ability to show what you're doing on your computer screen with your students. Things like the ability to be able to blow it up a bit and zoom into it. And a clear, seamless way of doing the exercises so that your students can follow along in real time. For example, I'm showing a screen share of an exercise from an ebook where you could be doing the exercise and the students would be following along. Here it shows an example of the exercises being done. You can see the green check marks and the red X that shows the answers that are right and wrong. So here you could be asking your students to answer the questions, and you would be typing in the answers, and everyone would see what's right and what's wrong. Another thing you could be showing is the answer features, so you can give the answers to your students as you're working through the questions. This is again is an example of you can see the little magic eye, the blue eye on the top of the screen. In fact, let me just get a little arrow out here for you, and I can show you what I'm talking about. Here we go. So up here you can see a little eye that if you click that, you would see the answers coming up. And here the eyes are on in the individual areas where you can see answers as well. So this is a way for you to show this to your students. Now, remember I talked about a learning management system before. Well, here there's a little link to take you to the actual learning management system associated with this book. So by clicking that, it'll take you to this screen that shows you online practice that the students could be doing on their own, that you could actually look at with them and share answers with. So you can be jumping back and forth from that, the way you would be doing on an interactive whiteboard when working in a classroom. This is an example of what that learning management system looks like. So the learning management system here, like I said before, allows you to create classes. And through those classes, you could also be, my pointer disappeared. Here it is. So through these classes, you could see how your students are progressing. So this is a link to show you an example of an Oxford University Press online practice learning management system, in case you're curious. Obviously, if you'd like to know more about these things, you can contact your local educational consultant, and they could walk you through these programs. Again, with screen share, you could not only share what you see on the screen, but a good video conferencing system will also give you the ability to share the audio. So this is an example of a toolbar from one of our textbooks that will play the audio that then your students at a distance can hear from their computer. And in ours, for example, you can control the speed of the sound, and you can also see the script as it's being spoken. So again, as you were working in the classroom, you can do this at a distance as well, sharing the screen with your students. Now, how do you share the sound? Well, depending on the video conferencing system, a lot of them will have different ways of controlling the sound. So here, for example, there's a little symbol in the middle that you can see that if you would click that on, you would be able to share sound. So everything that you hear on your computer, they would hear on their computer as well. Now, every video conferencing system is different. This one, for example, comes from Microsoft Teams, which is the toolbar for sharing sound on that video conferencing system. Now, this may be different on Zoom or on Google Meet or whatever video conferencing system you have. So you need to go and check the characteristics of that system to see which one to work with. Another thing that I really like that Microsoft Teams does is it gives control to your students if you want to. So your students could then, for example, do those exercises from their computer because you gave them the control of the screen, and then you could work together in an interactive way from a distance. Here's some examples also of some advanced techniques in screen sharing, and again, it's based on the video conferencing system that you've chosen. For example, you could share a portion of your screen, or you could share only the sound and not the video. There could be some sharing done from content from a second camera. So these are all advanced screen sharing systems. This one specifically came from Microsoft Teams, which is the one, Microsoft Teams, which is the one I use the most. And I'm the one that I'm the most familiar with. But again, these could be features you would find in other video conferencing systems as well. Here is the chat feature. Now, the chat feature comes from uh, almost all of the video conferencing systems that are on the market right now. So a chat feature gives you that opportunity to interact with your students. Now, if you have 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 15 students in your class, and you give them all the ability to speak, that could be quite chaotic. And so the chat features can be really useful for classroom management by having your students just type in what they want to say. And the better video conferencing systems give you the option of either publicly having a chat or privately having a chat. So you could chat specifically with one or more of your students based on the characteristics of the chat feature in the video conferencing system you've chosen. So we recommend choosing a video conferencing system that gives you more than one option to chat and giving you the option to chat with individuals or with groups together. Let's move this pointer out of the way. Here is another example of more chat features in, again, more advanced systems. This comes from Zoom. And here it gives you a lot of different options in how to set up your chat. Again, the more options you have, the more you can work with the systems to individualize them and make them work better for the classes that you're teaching. An example of the feature that I like the best, for example, is this do not disturb. So you could set up your chat so that during your plenary, during the time when you're explaining the lesson, let's say between 4 p.m. and 4:15 p.m., you could disable the chat so that they couldn't chat with each other and they can't chat with you and they have to pay attention. This is a great way to, again, manage your class at a distance. So look for chat features that give you the most options in the video conferencing platform that you choose. Another feature that I would look for in a video conferencing system is the ability to upload multiple file types. So look at the files that you want to share with your students. They could be PDFs, they could be JPEGs, they could be files that come from OneDrive, and make sure that the video conferencing platform you choose has the ability to upload those kinds of files. Again, this one comes from Zoom, and this one will allow you, for example, to upload from OneDrive. It uploads from your computer quite easily. You can share files in the chat so that you could share them amongst your class. Remember that the video conferencing platforms are looking to create features that are going to work the best for the people that are using them. And because of the COVID-19 emergency that's going on now, more people are choosing these video conferencing platforms. So they're competing with each other to find a way to have features that you need. If you see video conferencing platforms that don't have the features you need, you should write to them and tell them what you're looking for. They're very eager to satisfy and to please. And so if you're going through several types of video conferencing platforms and you're not seeing what you need, definitely communicate with them and let them know what you're looking for. Unlimited recording is also an important feature, in my opinion, in using a video conferencing platform. So I'm showing a picture of a screen of an ebook, for example, that records within the book itself, but I'm talking more importantly on the ability to record your session. So one thing you need to keep in mind is that you need to make sure that you make all of your students aware of the fact that you're recording if you want to record for privacy reasons. They need to know that if they're being recorded and if they maybe want to turn their camera off or be careful on what they say on the chat. And then by having a recording, you could review the recording after your class in order to make notes to send out to your team. Or perhaps a student couldn't attend one of your classes. You could send that student the link to your recording and they could review the class that you did that they weren't able to be in attendance on. So definitely look for a recording feature in the video conferencing platform that you're going to choose. It'll be useful for you to help you manage your classes. This is something that we haven't seen before in video conferencing platforms that I found really useful, and these are breakout rooms or private back channel chatter. This comes from Zoom as well as an example. Now imagine you have an exercise like this one, where you need to work with your classmates to match words with the pictures. Now, how are you going to break them into groups? Well, with features like breakout rooms, you can assign a group of your students into these breakout rooms where they can work on their own and then join the group afterwards in order to be able to share what they've learned. So a breakout room or a private back channel chatter room is a way to get them to work in pairs or to work in groups on exercises like this one or this one, where they need to exchange journal entries with a partner. This is definitely a feature that is an advanced feature. The one that I showed you came from Zoom. Look for it in the video conferencing platform you're choosing if you're planning on having your students break out into pairs or groups during your sessions. Now, this is an example of what I was saying before about the fact that with COVID-19, there's been a huge demand for these types of video conferencing platforms. And so they recognize that more and more users are looking to them, these video conferencing companies, to provide the features they need to do online classes. I don't know about you, but I've never heard of Zoom before until COVID-19 started. And now it's become the adjective to describe a video conferencing platform. People will say, I'm going to Zoom you, or I'll Zoom an invite to you. This is an example of what Google Meet, for example, is doing to meet that demand. They're creating improvements in order to meet the demands of all of the teachers that are looking to teach online. Things like an improved moderator control, or to replace a way to replace your background so that people don't see where you are for privacy reasons. The breakout rooms are really popular. The quick polls and questions and answers that you can use with their students. So you're going to notice video conferencing platforms being used more and more, and all of these platforms trying to find the features you need. So another big tip that I would give to all of you is definitely stay in touch with the various video conferencing platform companies to let them know what you need, because they're looking to find a way to satisfy what you're looking for. Now, those are a list of some of the features that I wanted to talk to you about. It's not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there are more features that you would need, and we'd be happy to hear from you. So feel free to write to us at your various offices around around the world for Oxford University Press to tell us other things that you're looking for in video conferencing platforms, and we're here to help you find that. So now I'm going to pass you over to Charlotte, who is going to talk a little bit about how you can create rapport online when working from a distance. Charlotte, to you.
Just through the different features that are available with video conferencing software, and I'm now going to have a look at how we can exploit these resources and help to create rapport in the online classroom. So I'm going to break this down into 3 sections. The first section is build community. I want you to take a minute just to think about what the word community means to you. So for me, when I hear the word community, I think of words like belonging, supported, involved. These all come to mind, and I think these are an indication of the inclusive nature of a classroom. It's really easy to believe that we could get lost in the virtual classroom and think that we only connect when we're communicating live and physically in a classroom or in an environment with other people. But if you think about how you communicate with your friends and family throughout your day, your week, etc., how much of that is sort of live physical interaction? I would argue that online learning brings more of us together. And if I think about the situation that I'm in now with work, I'm able to broadcast to people all over the globe. I'm able to work with colleagues who are based in different countries to me. This is something that I never did prior to this new locked down virtual world that we've all been plunged into. I think it really widens our learning community, and it makes our lessons more accessible for those learners who previously couldn't afford, either through time or money, to fly from their home country, enroll in a language school in another country, find somewhere to live for that time, etc., etc. So this sense of community in the online classroom is as strong and important as ever. And we'll look at some of the ways in which we can continue to support this. So, how can we support this? Online forums are a great example. These offer a virtual space to hang out. Rather than having a place for gaining knowledge, discussion is the means by which that knowledge is assimilated and analysed. This is already common practice in some institutions. For example, universities have lectures followed by seminar discussions. And here I've got 2 threads that I've created off the back of one of my seminars, one of my lessons. And this was a lesson where we were using Headway as our course. So one of the threads is asking learners to tell me about one of the best places you have travelled. The other thread is asking my learners to tell me what their favourite food is. So both threads relate to content from the course and both allow for personalisation, and this can be a really good motivator for engagement from our learners. Group chat is another great way to really help build that community in the online classroom. So here I've created a WhatsApp group and I've asked my class to share a photo from the weekend that they've taken and to tell us about it. So apps such as WhatsApp really allow you to create group communications where you can share messages and share lots of media. And these spaces also allow you, as an educator, to monitor the language that's being used and the level of interaction from your learners. And this input from your learners can really help you shape the focus of your lessons. It also helps implement this element of safeguarding as well, so you can monitor interaction between students and the communication is transparent, so you can ensure it remains appropriate. And I think in this world of change, this style of platform provides a tool that our learners are probably already quite confident and therefore competent in using. So it's worth bearing in mind that we should really take advantage of these opportunities of providing tools for our learners that they already know how to use. I also wanted to discuss virtual bulletin boards. So this is an example of one called Padlet. You might already be familiar with Padlet. It offers an alternative platform for communication. And I think having a variety of platforms where learners can communicate really helps to spark their interest, their engagement, and it offers flexibility. In the physical classroom, we are aware that learners respond better to some skill sets than others. Therefore, it's important to provide a blend of opportunities for our learners to express themselves in the virtual classroom too. So I created this Padlet here to focus on a lesson about directions. So the discussion is, have you ever got lost? If so, how did you find your way? Again, like group chats and chat forums, tasks like this help engage learners because they add this element of personalisation. And I'm using topics that most people can relate to, which in turn helps to build rapport between our learners. And if we ever get stuck for ideas of topics, we can turn to our course books. They've been, written in mind to sort of understand what topics our students can respond to and engage well with. The second section I want to focus on is opportunities for engagement. So it's important to provide students with opportunities to speak and communicate, and if our learners know that these opportunities exist, they're going to remain engaged. I know that if I'm ever attending a webinar and I know that at some point I'm expected to respond to what the presenter is talking about, it definitely is a motivational tool to get me to focus more on what the presenter is saying. If you've ever tried to have a conversation with multiple people using video conferencing software, you'll be aware that it all can get a bit messy at times. So usually when we're setting up video conferencing calls, we kind of go for the mute all microphones approach. Why not, as a teacher, set up a schedule for speaking time for your learners? You could have a list of your learners, assign a task or question to each one of them, and present them with a moment in the lesson where they can unmute their microphone and speak. By having this schedule or a checklist, you can ensure that each learner is getting an opportunity to speak, and this also allows you to create a record of their speaking, which can feed into ongoing assessment, and this is something that we'll have a look at later. It's also important to remember that, as in the physical classroom, you don't want to let your TTT, that's teacher talking time, take full reign over the lesson. So by providing our learners with opportunities to speak, we can really help to reduce our teacher talking time. Here's an example of some other ways that we can provide our learners with opportunities for engagement. So I'm just going to talk you through the platforms that are listed on the page right now. WebQuest is a site which provides lessons that make good use of the internet, basically. They engage learners in applying higher level thinking to authentic problems. WebQuest, I know, is already used in quite a few state schools in the UK in particular, so you might already be familiar with WebQuest in your own markets as well. Andy mentioned breakout rooms earlier. So breakout rooms are a really great opportunity for learners to engage with their peers, and being able to provide these smaller interactions can really help lower learners' affective filters. So if they feel a little bit shy speaking in front of the whole class, both in the physical classroom and the virtual classroom, sometimes just providing a smaller group or even one-to-one interaction can really help build your learners' confidence. Kahoot is something that's very popular with a lot of teachers I speak to, and it's certainly something that I used when I was a teacher. Who doesn't love a game? Kahoot is a really great way to engage learners and provide real-time interaction between them and their peers, and this gamification of learning is something that's always popular, not just with young learners, teenagers, but also adults as well. Storybird and Storym, they provide project work through collaborative storytelling, and Storybird in particular is something that I've used a lot in the past as a teacher. They've some really beautiful illustrations as part of the storytelling, which really help with supporting our lower level learners who want to be able to communicate. And then we've got video chat and chat rooms. So these platforms, again, they provide this real-time interaction. And I think just by seeing who you're talking to, you can feel better connected to that person. So I'm sure you've used some of these features. If you haven't, I really encourage you to search for them online and have a play around with them and see how you can exploit them in your lessons. Okay, the last section that I want to focus on is classroom communication. So by this, I mean your communication with your learners, thinking about the administrative aspects of lessons and teaching and classroom management. It's important to be organised. I think if we look at the picture right now, we can probably think of moments where we can relate to that feeling. Learners need to know that they are being looked after, and you want to come across as professional, even though you might feel massively out of your comfort zone in this new setup of online learning. When I asked a teacher recently how they felt about teaching online, they said to me, "I feel like I'm training as a teacher again." And by that, they meant that everything feels new. They're not sure how to manage the content that they're using. They kind of feel like they have this imposter syndrome when it comes to using the technology. I know that when I was training to be an ELT teacher, the work I put into my classes that made me feel like I was in control wasn't so much during the lesson, but more before and after the lesson. So it all came down to the planning, the communication with my peers, the information I passed on to my students. These were very much before and after activities, which allowed me then to have the space to think about it and really focus on what I wanted the messaging to be, and to really focus on what I'd learned from lessons and how I could then incorporate that into my future teachings. So how do we disseminate information? For example, like the practical stuff, when assignments are due, which exercises to complete, and how do we take what we as teachers have learned from our lessons and use this to shape our lesson planning? So let's have a look. So here is an example of a LMS, and I know Andy was talking about LMSs or learning management systems earlier. These are great tools to help us disseminate information to our learners. So the image on screen shows a message that was sent to a class using an LMS that comes with Headway 5th edition. This one is course specific, but you can find systems that are more generic or are perhaps more tailored specifically for your institution. Moodle and Blackboard are quite common over here. You possibly have different LMSs in your markets. This message above shows me setting up a homework task for my learners, but you can also use this messaging function to formulate practical requests such as please make sure you have your graded reader ready for Wednesday's lesson as we're focusing on reading skills, or please contact the office if you'd like to attend the social programme on Saturday. So there's lots of different ways that we could use these systems. We can also use phone calls. So there's nothing wrong with picking up the phone, calling a student. If you have these devices and you have this capability and you have this set up in your institution, of course, phone calls work really well for doing a sort of one-on-one review of your learner, to just check in and see how they're finding the lessons, how they feel like they're progressing, any kind of additional assistance you can provide for them. When I was teaching, I would have one-to-one tutorials with my students every fortnight, and this would be a really great opportunity for me to suggest areas of self-study that they could go away and practice to help them build up strength in the areas they felt like they weren't doing too well at. So obviously, if we're not able to do that in the physical classroom, phone calls work really well as a replacement for that. And then there's video calls as well. If a phone call is not possible, maybe a video call is instead, to be able to, again, assess our learners and see what extra support we can be providing for them and make sure that they've got a clear learning plan and learning goal. We can use email to disseminate information to either individual learners or classes of learners. And again, we can use messaging platforms such as WhatsApp to create class groups. Assessment and feedback is a big thing at the moment. In fact, one of the biggest questions I've been asked by a lot of teachers is, how do I assess my learners in the virtual classroom? Understandably, there are some concerns around the validity of testing, and being that you're not in the physical classroom, you can't monitor your learners to ensure that it's them taking the test or they're not getting additional help when you really just want to test what they know and what they have in their heads. So we need to reconsider the model of assessment. So to find out how students are progressing, we could use things like Gradebooks. We could get students to send in recordings or videos of them using English language. We could get students to send emails using written work. There's different tools and different platforms that we can use to really build up a portfolio of our learners' development. Here's an example of an online gradebook, and I know this is something that Andy brought up in the session earlier when he was talking about learning management systems. So this is a gradebook that I've taken from my English file course, and it shows me the breakdown of the different skills and systems that my student has been working on. And I can drill down further into these different boxes and see exactly what tasks they've been doing, how many tries they've had, what their overall scores have been, how much time they've spent on activities. So this really helps to build up a portfolio or evidence of learning. Earlier on, we talked about having maybe like a schedule or checklist when we want to provide opportunities for engagement for our students, so opportunities for them to unmute their microphones in a online lesson and have a go at speaking, talking about a task or an activity. if we can get students to record themselves doing this, or we can record them doing this using one of the tools that Andy showed us earlier, again, this helps build into this portfolio that we can create as an evidence of learning for our learners. And again, we mentioned emails earlier. These can provide evidence of learning in terms of writing skills, vocabulary that students are using. So overall, we need to think about this portfolio approach as being a more valid way to assess our learners. Okay, so here is the time when we would welcome any questions from the participants. So some questions that came up when we were doing this session, we've managed to make a note of, so we'd like to address some of those questions now. Andy, would you like to answer the first question in the box? I think this is relating to your part of the presentation.
Sure, thanks, Charlotte, and thanks very much for your contribution regarding the rapport that we need to maintain when working with our students and using these new tools. So before I jump into those questions, just a real fast recap. Our objective on these sessions today, on this session today, was first of all to identify what a video conferencing system is and differentiate it with the learning management system. So I hope we were able to do that. My part of the presentation was focused on the features that we consider to be essential in choosing a video conferencing system. So this is where these questions come in. So I've had two questions asked of me, and I'm sure Charlotte's heard this before as well, consistently. As many people come to us, many teachers come to us and ask, well, what video conferencing platform should I choose for my classes? And they would ask us which video conferencing platform we recommend for their classes that they're going to be doing. So the answer to that is a very personal choice, because it really depends on what you need to have in order to be able to work with your students. So whatever platform that has features that will allow you to maintain the rapport that Charlotte described just now, and give you all the tools you need to be able to facilitate your class in a way that you did before. For example, working in pairs, being able to share audio, and just being able to communicate with your students in a very efficient way so that they're able to participate and interact into your class. So our suggestion, basically, our answer to that question, for me anyway, is basically everything we just said up till now. All the features we listed, the rapport that that was described by Charlotte on how you can work with your classes, all have to be considered in choosing the best video conferencing platform. Charlotte, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to that, Andy. So I've had a few teachers say to me that their institutions have dictated the platforms that they have to use, but they're not happy with the platforms that they have to use. I would really encourage teachers to have conversations with their management and make it clear, you know, what tools you need to be able to deliver effective online lessons. And, you know, work with your management to try and get the best setup, not just for you as teachers, but for your students as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would agree with that. If you can't choose the platform that meets the requirements that you have, then you need to go to your principal or whoever's choosing the platform, not with the platform you want, but with the features that you need, and then allow them to decide how to accommodate you in that way so that you can have a positive experience for your students, which is the whole point. We recognize that this is a really difficult situation for all of us, you and as well as us, in this lockdown situation that is in various phases around the world. I'm not sure what it's like in your area, in your country. I work out of Italy. We were one of the first countries to be locked down, and so we started working remotely really quickly by the end of February, early March. And it's been a very steep learning curve. What hasn't changed is the teachers' desire to really connect with their students and to just stay in touch with them, make sure that they have the things they need. That real rapport, human side of teaching has actually flourished even more as we're trying to distance learn. And so I would propose you keep that in mind when we're trying to work in distance learning, and really try hard to maintain that connection with a group of students that are struggling just like you and quite afraid of the entire situation that's happening globally. So I think that would probably be my biggest proposal, my biggest tip, my biggest best practice for all of you is just remember that everyone's going through a tough time just like you, and problems happen online. The connection may get lost. There may be some difficulties with sound and with what they're seeing, but they realize that you're struggling like them. So don't worry too much about that. Just work really hard to just maintain that connection with your students. Charlotte, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, so totally agree with everything you say, Andy, and I think that really echoes with teachers globally. One question that I want to mention, something that came up in the presentation previously, and something that's come up in one-to-one interactions that I've had with teachers, is how they can access content for delivering lessons online. You're nodding your head, Andy, so I imagine it's a question you get in Italy a lot as well. And so my advice would be, get in contact with your local Oxford University Press representative. At the moment, AUP are offering a lot of support to schools and institutions that have been affected by COVID. So it's definitely important to touch base with your local representative, and if you don't know who they are, I believe you can go to the AUP website and you can find the details of your nearest office. But there's a lot of content available for delivering lessons online. I think a lot of teachers I know have been slaving away to create their own online lessons. It doesn't have to be that hard. There's already a lot of stuff out there that you can access.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good point, Charlotte. And so there's a lot of us around the world. Like I said, I'm the educational consultant in Italy. There's 10 of us in Italy. I know Charlotte has a big team in the UK as well. There are consultants from OUP all around the world. We've been focusing on this for the last few months. We've established a lot of criteria. We've come up with a lot of best practice, and we're absolutely happy to share that with you. So search us out. Look for us on our web pages. Try to find the consultant in your area. Get in touch with us, and I don't know about the rest of them, but I'm more than happy to schedule a meeting with you in my area, just because it's nice to talk to people. I'm stuck in my home just like you, and I'm a social person, so I'm happy to have a chat with you online. Use the video conferencing platforms together. We can share our experiences, and we can help you through this. We'll get through this together. This is going to be over at some point. But I think that, Charlotte, the world has changed, and I think that this is going to be integrated in the way that we teach, even after COVID-19 in some respect. So we'll be back into classrooms, but we'll still be doing some online teaching. So it's good to get a little bit of experience doing this. What do you think, Charlotte?
Definitely. And again, that echoes, a lot of things that I've heard from teachers in my market. This is not a short-term fix, but this is a long-term change to the way that we deliver lessons.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it's time for us to conclude this session. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. It's been our pleasure to share with you our best practice. This conversation can continue by getting in touch with us individually around the world. Enjoy the rest of your sessions. Thanks again for joining us. Charlotte, would you like to say goodbye?
Thank you. Yeah, goodbye, everyone. Stay safe, and good luck with everything.
Thanks again, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.